We'll begin our topic tonight, our discussion. It's good to see so many of us here tonight. Glad to be back with you, especially as we enter into our retreat. Retreat is so important to have that quiet time to reflect, to examine your life up to this point as you prepare for our run up to Easter. Easter's not that far away. It's about 8 weeks away. And we will have the opportunity to receive the sacrament of confession for the first time for many of us this Saturday. We received confession before Easter, so that we're prepared, our soul is prepared to receive Holy Communion at Easter. Those who are being baptized don't have to go to the sacrament of confession because baptism forgives our sins, but we do need to examine our conscience and our life to know what's being forgiven, because we want to change our life. And you need to know what needs to be changed. You need to take ownership of it, express sorrow to God, and then move forward from baptism. Otherwise, we just slide right back into the same bad habits. So today, we're discussing the 10 Commandments. Last week we discussed confession. This week we discussed what we confess. And we'll pull a few points out of our book, Catholic Christianity. If you look on if you have your book here, on page 155, begins the section on morality, how we live, the choices we make, right and wrong. You start on page 155. Paragraph 1 says, the place of morality in the Catholic faith. Like the faith itself, this book has 3 parts. How Catholics think, Catholic theology, how Catholics live, Catholic morality, and how Catholics pray, Catholic worship. And these are the 3 essential parts of every religion: faith, morality, and spiritual life. So Catholicism is not just a set of ideas. Some people think religion is just a set of beliefs. You have your beliefs, I have my beliefs, you have Muslim beliefs, you have Jewish beliefs, you have Hindu beliefs, I have Catholic beliefs, or maybe I have Presbyterian beliefs. It's not just a set of beliefs. It's a way of life. The followers of Jesus in the Acts of the Apostles says they were followers of the way. Before it was called Catholicism or Christianity, it was called the way. Jesus came and taught us a new way of life. Not just a way of thinking, but a way of praying and a way of acting. It's everything, right? As Christians, it's a whole perspective on life. It's an understanding of the meaning of life, the correct way to live. Ultimately, the way to find happiness. This is the right way. This is the best way to find happiness in this life and forever in heaven. Happiness will never be complete here. Some of us experience it more than others. Some have really hard times down on earth. Some are born into poverty or into areas of war or difficult family situations or mental health problems or physical health problems. And they can still be happy in this life, but they look forward to the ultimate happiness of heaven. But to live well here and into eternity, on earth and in heaven. So it's a way of life. It's important to remember. It's not just a set of rules, it's not just a set of ideas or teachings. It's a whole way of life. If we turn to page 158, goes deeper into this understanding, the morality part, the following the rules. It says for Catholics, morality is a love affair with Christ and his people, though not romantic love. It has its laws and rules, as a city has its streets. Streets are essential to a city, but they're not the very essence of a city. And they are not to live in, though unfortunate street people do sometimes. Streets are a means to the end of getting home. Home is where the real living takes place. Similarly, moral rules are the street map to the good life, but they are not the thing itself. The thing itself is a relationship of love, like a marriage. The marriage covenant has laws, like God's covenant with us, but husband and wife are faithful to each other first of all, not to the laws. The laws define and command their fidelity to each other. Principles are for persons, not persons for principles. Catholic morality is personalistic. It is person-centric because it is Christocentric, and Christ is a person, not a principle. A little play on words there, but we're trying to love God and we're trying to love each other. God gave us 10 commandments in the Old Testament, but Jesus summarized them down into 2. Right? What are the 2 laws? Love God and love your neighbor. If you do that, you'll find as much happiness as you can here, and you'll be eternally happy in heaven. Who's in heaven? God and human persons, and angelic persons too, the angels. But it's people. Heaven is centered on people. Earth is too, but sometimes we forget that. We get focused on things and think we'll find happiness in them, but we won't. They're just means to the end of a relationship, trying to help us to relate to each other. But it's the relationship that's meaningful, relating to God and to other people. So the Catholic faith is about relating to Jesus. That's the goal. God who came to earth. And I want to pull one more principle out of here. Speaking of principles, page 181. The point of principles, or rules, or commandments. Principles are certain. If there's one thing the modern secular mind claims to be certain of about morality, it is that no one can really be certain about morality. If there's any one thing about religious believers that is utterly incomprehensible to most of the media and public education and journalism today, it is the fact that believers claim they can know what is really true good and evil. In other words, moral principles. Typically, modern people say that morality is always a complex issue. G.K. Chesterton, he's an English Catholic author from about 100 years ago, explained why. Morality is always terribly complicated to a man who has lost all his principles. If you have no standards of right and wrong, no principles to live by, it seems really complicated what's right and wrong. Who can know? Who can know? We can know. Right? We should know what is right and what is wrong, what works and what doesn't work, what is helpful and what is hurtful. It shouldn't be that complicated. But we can become very confused. I was reading a section on saints just the other day, and it said, saints are so diverse. Some are hermits in the desert, some are kings, King Louis of France. He was a Crusader knight. St. Francis of Assisi was a peacemaker. Both are saints. Some are contemplatives, some are husbands and wives. Some were celibate, some were priests, some were lay people. Some were young. St. Maria Grey's 12 years old, some were old. Some were highly educated, some were not educated. That's why saints are fascinating. But what they show us is there's no one way to love God and others. There are many different ways. But there's a commonality to the path. They said there's a definite beginning point that's been given to us. There's a definite destination. And there are rules of engagement along the way. But acknowledging the starting point and the ending point and the rules, blaze your own path. There are numberless ways to go about it. And I thought that's beautiful. So ultimately, start with baptism. Jesus said that's a good way to start the Christian life. Heaven is the goal. You know what you're trying to get to. And in a sense, the 10 Commandments and the teachings of the church are the rules of engagement. But there are so many different ways to live it out, according to your personality and your temperament and your interests and your talents and your circumstances. So many different ways to live it out. The word Catholic means universal. It comes from the Greek word katholikos. It's for everybody, every racial group, every ethnic group. And so it's going to be so diverse. It's the most diverse religion. It's the religion God created, knowing the complexity of human life. He made it flexible so that it can encompass every person. We all have a way of living it out. So I like that vision. So we're looking at today the 10 Commandments, which are the moral code, how we live, what we should do, what we should not do. But always remember, it goes back to love. So the Ten Commandments, turn, let's see. Let's turn to page 200. We have a listing of the Ten Commandments. Sometimes, particularly in what we call Protestant Bibles, Catholic Bibles, I mean, there's no really such thing as a Protestant Bible or a Catholic Bible. The Bibles are different translations, but some translations the Catholic Church has approved, some it is not approved. Ultimately, typically in Bibles approved by Protestant Christians, there's 7 less books in the Old Testament. The New Testament is the same, but there's 7 books left out of the Old Testament. Though sometimes in Protestant versions, you'll see those books at the end. They'll put them in like an appendix. So we don't agree on the number of books in the Old Testament, but we do agree on the New Testament. But we don't always agree on the translation. But we also know where we don't agree. So the Bible wars are largely over. We know where the points of disagreement are, and we agree to disagree. And we say, yeah, this is how you translate it, but you also know that many other people translate it this way, and vice versa. So it's not as much of a sticking point as it used to be. So sometimes the Ten Commandments are numbered a little bit differently as well, which is okay. They're just the rules of life that God gave us. It comes from the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, chapter 20. They're also repeated in other books. But we'll read it. God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or set in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. We summarize that into a simpler statement. I am the Lord your God, you shall not have false gods before me. Next, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. That's the 2nd commandment. 3rd, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your manservant or your maidservant or your cattle or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So the 3rd commandment, keep holy the Sabbath day. 4th commandment, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gives you. 5th commandment, you shall not kill. 6th commandment, you shall not commit adultery. 7th commandment, you shall not steal. 8th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. 9th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or his maidservant, or his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now that last one is usually broken into 2. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, 9th commandment. 10th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's goods. So it's all there. How you break it out sometimes is done differently. But there is a traditional sense of the 10 commandments. This is important. They're just rules of life to show us how to live well. Now, when God made us, he gave us a conscience. We have a brain. We have an intellect. We're intelligent. We're rational. We can reason. We can think about things you can't see. We can think about God who's invisible. Animals don't do that. Plants don't do that. Humans can reason about things. And so we should know what is right and wrong without God having to tell us. So use your brain. Does it work? Look at the big picture. Is this good for human society? Use your brain. We should know right and wrong. But God knows we're confused. We don't always like to think hard. We're lazy. So he sent Moses to give us the 10 Commandments, to write them down. Make it easier. Okay, I'll write them down for you. We still don't get it. So then Jesus came to earth. God himself said, okay, I will come and I will explain the 10 Commandments to you. And then we killed him. Like, darn it, the fifth commandment, you shall not kill. You just don't get this. So then he gave us the Catholic Church to explain it to us for the rest of human history. So we should have known it anyway, but he gave us the Ten Commandments, and then he came and explained it, and now we have the church to write books so we can understand it, right? So they're not just rules for Catholics. I mean, Moses wasn't even Catholic. He was Jewish. There were rules for the Jewish people, but they're not just for the Jewish people and for Christians. They're for everybody. They apply to every human being. These are things we should know anyway. That's important. They're not arbitrary rules. They're not Catholic rules. They're from the Old Testament. So we're going to break them down a little bit. Now you could take a class on any one of these 10 and teach a college class on it. And we're just going to do a little overview. So these are the rule of life. Everything in life falls under these 10 rules. Sometimes people think, I can do this. It's not in the 10 Commandments. Like, yes, it is. Everything falls under. These are a summary. The first 3 relate to how we treat God. The next 7 relate to how we treat each other. Often when people examine their conscience and go to confession, they don't think about how they treat God. It's not as obvious. My husband or my wife or my brother or my sister or my coworker, that's a little more obvious to us. But also, how do you treat God or how do you not treat God? Sometimes we don't treat him at all. We ignore him. He's not part of our day. He's not part of our week. So how to love God and how to love others. If you're breaking one of the first 3 commandments, you're really not loving God the way he asked you to. I love God. Do you pray every day? Nope. But I love God. Do you go to church on Sunday? Nope. But I love God. You're like, not very well. Not the way he asked you to. You should love him on his terms, not your terms. You don't get to dictate how God wants to be loved. In a sense, you're claiming God. You're claiming the authority to say, this is the way I'm going to do it. Well, you're already started on the wrong foot, right? That's not how humans act. Humans say, I'm under God and I serve God. I do it his way. They say the theme song of hell is I did it my way. Some people request that for funerals. Like, no, we're not going to sing that at the funeral. Frank Sinatra. You can interpret that song in different ways, but you have to do it God's way. There are so many people that say they love God and don't go to church on Sunday. I don't know you. I'm not judging you. I'm just objectively saying you're not loving him the way he asked you to. The next 7 relate to how we treat others. If you're breaking them, you're not loving others. I love my girlfriend. Well, if you do that, it's not love. It's lust. How do you know? It says it right in the 10 Commandments. This is old school. Moses lived 3,300 years ago. 10 Commandments have staying power. It's a long time. We've been trying to figure out ways around them for 3,300 years. So that's important to realize. People say, well, what if someone doesn't believe in God, but they're good? I said, well, I don't know. What do you mean? What's good? Well, they're a good person. According to what standard? What is the basis for deciding if someone's good? Because they think they're good? The 10 Commandments are the standard of determining if someone's good or not. No, they're a good person. Okay. Do they go to church on Sunday? No. What other commandments are they breaking? Now, we all break the commandments, so we're not... The question is, do you accept the commandments as your guide of life? Even though we're failed miserably in following them often. Do you believe this is true? Or is this the standard you're trying to follow, even though you often fail? That's all God asks is that you try. He knows you're going to fail. He even gave us a sacrament to help pick us back up, confession. The question is, do you accept that? Do you submit yourself to that? There's really 2 ways of looking at life. Either you see the natural world that God made us in your human nature and you try to conform yourself to what God made, or you try to conform God's nature to yourself. Who's the center? Is God the center or are we the center? If we're the center, essentially we're saying we're God. Even though we wouldn't say that literally, it's how we're acting. So do we try to conform ourselves to the natural world God made? and the moral rules and norms, or do we insist on trying to conform nature to ourselves? And a lot of people who say, I'm a good person, are trying to conform nature to themselves. They define what is good, rather than accepting God's definition. So, to go through this a little bit, first three, ways we love God. There are ways you can do wrong, or there are ways you can avoid doing good. In other words, you can break the commandment by not doing something, as well as by doing something. And that's the subtlety when you're examining your conscience. People will say, 20 years since my last confession, did a couple things wrong. What did you do right? How often have you volunteered in the last 20 years? How long have you given money? How much money have you given to the poor or the church in the last 20 years? How much have you served the poor in the last? How much have you extended yourself to love your neighbor? That's often something we don't think about. We have our core sins that we're struggling with, and we know we fall, but there's so much more of life that we often don't look at or consider. I ain't killed nobody. That comes up sometimes in confession, like, good for you. Good for you. Do you go to church? Do you do things? Do you pray every day? What are you doing? Are you pursuing God, or are you pursuing others? Now, interestingly, increasingly, we are killing people, and we don't even realize it in our society. So, put God first commandment. One of the ways we break this often is just by not praying. If you go through a day and haven't prayed at all, clearly God wasn't first. You'd have a hard time making that argument. Some type of daily prayer is important. We try to encourage our parishioners to pray 3 times a day. Short prayer in the morning, short prayer at night, a little longer prayer somewhere in the middle, 10 minutes, conversation with God. So that's a common way of breaking the first commandment, is just not praying. And maybe there are some days you don't pray. Okay, well, just bring it to confession and make a commitment, make a plan of prayer. Taking the Lord's name in vain. Taking God's name in vain literally, or using vulgarity, cursing, right? You're acting less than the dignity you have as a human person. You're lowering yourself. Keeping holy the Sabbath day. There were 2 things mentioned. You'll notice in Exodus. First, it said don't work. Secondly, it said do pray. So don't work and do pray. Increasingly, we're working on Sundays. Increasingly, businesses are open on Sundays. But even working around the house, we call it unnecessary work. I enjoy cutting my grass on Sunday. It's relaxing. It's not relaxing for your neighbor who's sitting in their chair on the back deck trying to take a nap or read a book. We are communally resting on Sunday. And so no unnecessary, called servile work. You have to cook maybe you have to clean the dishes, maybe you're organizing for guests to come over. But generally speaking, try not to do manual labor. Try not to do laundry. Try not to do yard work. There are certain businesses that can be open on Sunday, food industry, transportation, medicine, some forms of entertainment to help people to relax. Though obviously the people working aren't relaxing, so you try not to employ those forms of industry as much as possible. But shopping for clothes or hardware stores or unnecessary shopping is violating the 3rd commandment, right? People should be able to, most business should be closed on Sunday so people can go to church, they can spend time with their family, and they can rest. And they're not just resting to work. That kind of rest is actually the truest life. Work is part of life and it's dignified, but spending time with God and others is the goal of life. And so at least on Sunday, spend time with God and others, and even time with yourself. To have time to think, to process what happened in the past week, to calm your soul. So in a sense, Sunday is the core of our existence, and then Monday through Saturday revolves around the Sunday. We're not just taking a break on Sunday so we'll be refreshed to work on Monday. Sunday rest is different than even a vacation. Vacations are good too. It's time with family and rest, but Sunday rest is remembering who we are. I like to say, every 7 days, stop what you're doing and look up. Remember there's a God. Remember you came from him and you're heading back to him. And look at your week to say, how did it go? Did I live in reference to God? Or did I offend him this week or neglect him? So Sunday, to rediscover Sunday, take back Sunday, is something we're losing it. If people don't go to church on Sunday, why should you have off? Like, it's not efficient for everything to shut down every 7 days. Why should you have off? Increasingly, you don't have off. I mean, now, Amazon delivers on Sundays. Does the post office deliver on Sundays now? They're holding out, but they're probably losing their business. Post office delivers Amazon packages on Sunday. There you go. So, increasingly, businesses are open on Sunday because there's not a real logic not to be open because people don't go to church, so why not work? Well, you can take another day off, but then there's not a communal day off. You can't take off when everyone else has off and spend time visiting. So we're losing Sunday, so do what you can to take it back. If your business is open on Sunday, just say, well, look, other people work on Sunday, I'll work on Saturday. If you have a business, you have a real moral obligation not to be open on Sunday unless it's an absolutely essential industry for society. Like we said, food or transportation, medicine, drugstores, some forms of entertainment. So, third commandment is one very commonly broken by many people today, right? They choose not to go to church and they choose to work. Fourth commandment, honor your father and mother, relates to any of your relationships, primarily to mom and dad, but also in marriage, in a sense, to each other, to your children, children to parents, brothers and sisters toward each other. It's honoring your family obligations. God says love your neighbor, but especially your family. That's where your neighbor starts. Spouse, children, brothers and sisters, cousins, aunts and uncles, godparents, and then extends to your neighbors, your co-workers, your classmates. Neighbor keeps going out. Then it's the strangers, the poor, and the homeless, and the hungry. But it starts at home. And we know that's not easy. Marriage isn't easy. Some of us have experienced this. I did a Google search. Last year there were 2 million weddings in the United States and 1 million divorces. That's just an observation. Marriage is really hard today. It's very difficult for some reason. And these are people who fell in love with each other. So God says love your enemies. Apparently it's very difficult to love people you love. Which is a fact. Which means we need a lot of help. Which is why we're here. Sometimes I drive down the highway and I see people flying by, thousands of cars, and a lot of those people think that what I do is irrelevant. A priest, what's a priest? What's a religion? It's not real life. Oh yeah, because you don't need help, right? You don't need God. You don't need grace. Life's easy. You're all thriving and succeeding. Your marriages are awesome. Your brothers and sisters are best friends. You love your coworkers and your neighbors. Give each other a high five every day when you're going out to work. Life is difficult. Getting along with people is difficult. Controlling our own behavior is difficult. We have bad habits that are destructive. It's difficult to stop. We were always meant to be helped by God. We were never meant to go alone. It's like a 5-year-old child saying, Mom and Dad, I got this. You know what? I just feel really bad about relying on you for everything. You know, you take a break, I'm going to take care of myself. It's ridiculous. You die. You're not supposed to live by yourself as a child. Guess what? Humans aren't supposed to live by themselves. We die. We're supposed to be dependent on God and we're begging for grace and guidance. We're so confused. We should know the 10 Commandments, but we're kind of dumb. We need Him to remind us. We fake ourselves out. We get so confused. Look at today. We call good things bad and bad things good. Things that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would never have accepted. Now it's common and everyone accepts it. And you feel like you're backwards because you're behind them. think, well, wait a minute, let's think about this. This doesn't seem quite right. But everyone seems to be embracing it. We can fake ourselves out. So 4th commandment, honor your father and mother. 5th commandment, you shall not kill, which means you shall not intentionally kill innocent persons. So first of all, it's persons, not animals. This applies to persons. And sometimes we accidentally kill people, sadly. This means intentionally killing an innocent person. Sometimes in war there's justification, sometimes in self-defense, but never intentionally killing an innocent person. That's the core of the 5th commandment. But as a society, we don't always agree on what a person is. Think about the unborn child. A big debate in our country is the unborn child a person? That shouldn't be really complicated. What did G.K. Chesterton say? Some people say morality is very complicated, but they're people without principles. They have no grounding for even deciding, is an unborn child alive? How do you even decide that? What's the basis of your decision? If you don't even know what a person is, if you don't know about the immortal soul, if you don't know there's a God and there's a life after death, if we're just animals, maybe it is okay. So, 5th commandment covers a lot of interesting questions: self-defense, capital punishment, just war theory. 6th commandment, you shall not commit adultery. This covers any type of immoral sexual activity. And we're going to have a whole talk about sexual morality where we'll get into those issues. I realize that talk's coming after your first confession. You might want to make a second confession a few weeks from now when you're like, oh, I didn't know that was wrong. But sexual love is for a man and woman in marriage. That's it. Any seeking sexual pleasure outside of a man or woman in marriage is a sin. We'll explain why, but that's what that commandment is talking about. That's the Catholic explanation of that commandment. 7th commandment, you shall not steal, shall not bear false witness. Which is it? You shall not bear false witness. See, they can be numbered in different ways. No, you're lying. So, you shall not steal. There's a certain, obviously, don't take what's not yours, but it also means you have to share, because not everyone has the same amount. You were given more, so you have a responsibility to share with others. The whole world is for people to use. So, stealing, obviously taking things that aren't yours, but also you get into copyright laws, and in modern times with technology, there's some interesting questions of morality about what is taking what is not yours. But also sharing. 8th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, lying, telling falsehoods about someone on purpose, hurting someone's reputation when it's not necessary. 9th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. So 6th commandment, you shall not commit adultery, talks about actions. 9th commandment is more in your thoughts, or lusting after people. Pornography is a huge temptation today. We're in a pornographic society. We're hypersexualized. Everything is about sexuality. It's hard. It's difficult to live chastity and modesty. So how do we struggle with that, and how do Christians try to live that out? They say, again, the benchmarks of good living are living chastity and charity and prayer. Chastity in our relationships, charity and caring for other needs around us, and prayer, loving our God. And then finally, you shall not covet your neighbor's goods. Jealousy, envy, greed, taking more than you need, not sharing with others, being angry at other people's success. Some of these are subtle. They're attitudes, but they're attitudes that you hold on to and that you enjoy, not just passing thoughts. We all have those passing thoughts. But what do you do with the thoughts? So the 10 commandments cover, again, every aspect of human life. First 3, how to love God. Last 7, how to love each other. This book breaks them down. Really encourage you to work through them. We're going to have a separate talk, as I said, on sexual morality, and a separate talk on thou shalt not kill, respect for human life. If it's a mortal sin to kill an innocent person, and the unborn child is an innocent person, there's a lot of serious sin happening out in American society. By people who think it's okay. We're in crisis mode. We got to get this one right. You may not go to heaven. Now we have the question of assisted suicide. If you do that, if you make the wrong choice, you may not go to heaven. These are serious questions. Sexual activity outside of marriage. There's a traditional teaching on this which is very clear. You may fall in weakness, just say you're sorry, confess it, but if you say it's okay, how much of American society says you can have sexual relations outside of marriage? Or even that marriage isn't between a man and a woman, it could be between two men. We have a lot of debate over basic commandments. You can see why we need guidance. Sometimes we ask some of you, why do you want to become Catholic? You say, I want more structure in my life. I don't know how to make choices. I don't know what's right or wrong. I want to be happy, but I don't know what decisions lead to happiness. We live in a time where there's no guidelines. Well, the good news is there are. And there have been for 3,300 years. This is not new, but we have to keep rediscovering these truths. So as we go forward in RCI, there are no bad questions. As we talk about some serious moral issues, there's no bad questions. We're all affected by the society. We're confused, right? What are the principles by which we make our decisions? Once we learn those principles, then morality is not so complex. So let's take a few minutes, about 10 minutes, to talk at our tables. Was there something in this talk that was something new you heard about one of the commandments or the concept of commandments in general? But a lot of food for thought around morality and right and wrong, and how can society get so confused when over very basic questions we don't agree. And we do call good things bad and bad things good. So just open up some conversation. What were some things perhaps that sparked a thought for you, just for the next few minutes?